Lands Act was done in 1906, and it's a very plain act. It's got 3 paragraphs. Before we get started, huh?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No.
You can't hear me? I'm going to clean your ears out, girl. I want to recognize somebody here. We have Grace Bennett. She's the chair of the Board of Supervisors for Siskiyou County in California. She came up to listen to our little presentation tonight. Do we have any other elected officials anymore?
No, look at that.
Anyway, the Antiquities Act was set aside in the very beginning to protect artifacts and special places like Devil's Tower or natural arches. And the act required that the land be as small as possible to protect the object. The object being maybe an Indian village where they discovered an archaeological dig or something like that. But the law requires that the land area be contained as small as it can be to protect the object. Now, how does that fit with the 2.5 million acres? How does that fit with 1 million acres? This is total abuse of the law. So far, this president has done 13 and counting national monuments. And the thing with national monuments, it's always, most always a lame duck president that does them. He's got nothing to lose. So he's the guy that goes out, and everybody does them. Carter did 5 million acres, but he did them in Alaska. So now we can see it. Bush did several million acres, George W., but he did them in the ocean where nobody could see them. They've all done it. But as of late, starting with Mr. Clinton, primarily the very liberal or progressive type of presidents, have abused this act terribly. What do we got over in Cascade-Siskiyou Monument? It started out at, what, 52,000, it's up to 86,000 now. That monument, I think, is right on the horizon for the California expansion. When that was proposed in the year 2000, because of the organization of the local people, primarily out of Siskiyou County, California, and our elected official, that did not go across the board. But they want that extension. There's a internal document that's been floating around. It was not for public release. A BLM document that listed preferred places they'd like to make national monuments. All right. So far, he's been working from this list. He did in January 15th. He did a buried mountain sewing. I'll find it for you here. What is it? He did a monument down in California, right off of this list. And what stirred me up on this issue is that when these things are done, it's just a proclamation. It can be done in the dead of night. When he went into California last month in San Bernardino County, regular local elected officials were already working on legislation to protect a very lucrative mining operation in that county and try to find a balance between that and environmental issues. Well, he went and did this in the dead of night. He came in, didn't tell elected officials he's coming in, and he proclaimed 1.8 million acres in 3 different monuments, including that one that had the lucrative mining operation in it. So that kind of got me going. What's going to stop this guy? What can people do to bring attention to these? We've been, my friend Jim Nolan and several people in this room were involved in the fighting monuments back in the year 2000 in the Clinton administration. And we know from experience, the only thing that stops them is public opposition. People have to be opposed to it. If the public sits back and doesn't oppose these things, a lot more likely they're going to happen. So the only thing you can do with these things is wake people up. Make public awareness, public education on that subject. That's what this meeting is about. I just want people to know that these things are going on. There's several monument proposals, and I have maps of in Oregon right now. There's 2.5 million acres that they're proposing in Malheur County. Owyhee, how do you pronounce that? Owyhee Canyon?
Owyhee.
Owyhee. It sounds like Hawaii. But it's in the canyon area, it's 2.5 million acres. I've got a map of it. Let me show it to you. There's the map of that thing that they want to propose. Now that's a big hunk of land. The thing that gets me about this, they claim They claim they're protecting this land. My question is, what are they protecting it from?
Yeah, from us.
No, what's the biggest danger to the forest lands?
Fire.
Catastrophic wildfire. So how does creating a monument or a wilderness protect that? It just creates a scenario where that's more likely to happen. Right now our forests are in a dreadful state. There's another monument proposed in Douglas County. That's the Douglas Fir National Monument. That's 500,000 acres. And that's a heavily forested area. So locking this up in a monument, all that's going to do is create a fire hazard where there's no way to really fight a fire. Both this monument and the one I just showed you are proposed by the very same person, a gentleman called Andy Kerr. Now, if you know your history, Andy Kerr is a co-founder of Earth First. How many people know what Earth First was? The radicals that like to spike trees and put loggers in danger and also burn sawmills. But
put thousands of loggers out of work.
Put thousands of loggers out of work and everything else. Dear, sweetie, could you give me a bottle of water, please? So what I have to do here is wake people up. We got to stay engaged in this. You know, Jefferson said in America, we don't have a government of the people. We have a government of the people that participate. Our problem is we don't have enough people participating on the conservative side. The environmentalists are very well organized, highly funded, and they're in cahoots with the federal bureaucratic agencies. So what we have to do is become engaged and stay engaged. We went through and had a meeting on this Cascade-Siskiyou Quest. Do I know if this thing's going to happen? No. Can anybody tell me it's not? No. Could it happen in the dead of night? Yes. Could it be in the works right now? Yes. Nobody's going to tell us that this is going to happen, just like in San Bernardino. We identified over 1,400 private homes inside that monument. If you're unfortunate enough to live in an area where they draw a line on the map and you're inside that line, you become what they call an in-holder. What an in-holder is somebody who has to ask permission to go to his private property because it's inside of a monument, inside of a wilderness, something like that. And eventually, these in-holders are forced to become what they call willing sellers. What a willing seller is a guy who's had his property so regulated that the value goes down, down, down. And by the time he gets to a certain point, he's willing to sell before it's valueless. So, that's part of the reason I'm concerned about this. I've been fighting for private property rights for 30 years because it's the basic foundation for our liberty and freedom. So, this is a map of Southern California, not Northern Oregon. Right in here is where they want to put that monument. Look at this like a big jigsaw puzzle. It's piece by piece by piece. And they're putting this big jigsaw puzzle together. They want to propose an ancient forest of over 10 million acres. That's what the KS Wild is proposing now. Yeah, Jim.
So the light green are your wilderness areas?
The dark green is the wilderness areas. Now the light green is wilderness areas, and this is what they're considering potential. The dark green is what they're considering addition to potential wilderness areas. See, this is the one they're already proposing up here by Crater Lake. Okay, that's another 500,000 acres addition to a wilderness. I'm going to shock you all. The environmental movement is not about the environment. It is not about the environment. It hasn't been for a lot of years. Our environment actually today is healthier and cleaner than it's been in the last 30 years. Our water is cleaner, our air is cleaner. We've cleaned up our act a lot. The environmental movement today is not about the environment. What I like to say is the old Reds wearing a green mask. That's what it's all about. It's about strangling and decimating rural economies. Would you say that's been pretty effective? Environmental regulations pretty well hammered rural economies throughout the western states, hasn't it? Look what happened. Look what's happened to the ranchers there in Burns. What happened to the loggers here in Oregon, Northern California, and Washington? All to save what? Spotted owl? You know the spotted owl is declining faster than it ever did? It's It's declining faster than ever did. I got a guy, remember that meeting, Jim, we had out in Selma with the guy who was doing the study for the Forest Service? He was a scientist doing a study for it. And he told us right then and there, spotted owls don't like old growth. They prefer rocky ridge tops. So now the spotted owl is declining because of its cousin, the barred owl, in its area. It's a bigger owl, and it's more aggressive. So now the answer is to save the spotted owl, because after they decimated logging, the owl is still declining faster than ever did, right? So now to save the spotted owl, you know what they're doing? They're going out and shooting the barred owl. You know what's funny about that? They can mate. So what did we shoot? Barred owl or spotted owls? So I mean, you know, it's not about the environment. It's really not about the environment. It's not about endangered species. I went on a quest myself 5 years. 5 years I looked for the list of dead bodies. Because you know the Endangered Species Act, that's real, right? That's important, right? So you know, as much as it's hammered people's lives, destroyed people's property rights, decimated rural communities, you think they'd have a list of dead bodies, right? I wanted the list of dead bodies. Show me how many animals of mankind since 1492, since white men set foot here, how many dead species are there? There's no list. There is no list. I was in Harry Reid's office in Washington, D.C. We went back there in the year 2000, 2001, trying to help the Klamath farmers get some relief for their water rights. Remember when they shut off the water in 2000? Well, there was a big protest over at the head gates. We were there, a lot of us were there, and we finally put a group together and went back to D.C. to try to get Harry Reid and some of these other senators to do something to help the farmers. I've seen deeds signed by FDR. You know how the farmers got that land in Klamath Falls? It was allotted out to World War I and World War II veterans for service to their country. You know, I've seen the deeds signed by FDR. So what are they doing now? When they shut that water off, the property rights went, and people were selling out for pennies on the dollar. So I asked Harry Reid's top environmental aide, I says, okay, all this decimation of property rights and the rural economies, surely you have a list, right? There's a list somewhere, right? Oh no. I said, what do you use? How do you know? He said, what do you use? He said, we use the UN Red List. Now, if you want to Google the UN Red List, you'll see a list of animals all across the world that might be, maybe, someday, possibly, could be, might be endangered. But no extinct species. Did you know that 95% of the animals or critters that ever lived on planet Earth went extinct? Yeah. Extinction is a way of life on planet Earth. Mankind had nothing to do with that. So, this whole idea of the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, all of this stuff, it's not about that. It's about controlling our lives. Government wants one thing: control, control, control. That's what it's all about. So these things are no different. Monuments are no different. They use these things to eventually lock up our natural resources. This is what got me excited about this. This is a paragraph from that internal document, not for public release. It's floating around on the internet. But this is the header of it. It says, attachment. This is Prospective Conservation Designations, National Monument Designation under the Antiquities Act. This has got about 30 different lists on it. Okay, and this is available. I think you can find this online, but I got it from somebody else. Then I found it online. But what got me started on this was this paragraph here, talking about the Cascade-Siskiyou Monument. That's the one over by Ashland. All right. Now they're talking to this. The 2000 Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument was established to protect extraordinary biodiversity. Key word. You learn these buzzwords: biodiversity. Okay. And vegetation found in southwestern Oregon. Unfortunately, because of political constraints, the monument's southern border was artificially established to the California state line. So they didn't get their extension across the state line because there was opposition. We rallied a lot of people back then. A lot of people got involved in this. I'd like to see people get involved again in our governments and in these issues. The more people that get involved, the better chance we have of actually winning back our country. But if we stand aside, if we don't do anything, I'll guarantee you we'll be run over. Yes.
So what did they do?
What did they do
What
what?
did they do to stop that? Because that's what we need.
Public outcry. Rallies, meetings, tell them, Jim.
Well, one of the most effective things that we found that happened was, I mean, we spent a lot of time with meetings. Ron and I must have been over 50 meetings in 10 years. And we would tell people this stuff, and they said, well, what can we do? What can we do? We're hopeless. And we just came up on this really low-tech idea, and that was really postcards. And we put out about 10,000 postcards. Okay. And it was against the monument in California, but also the one in Pinellas Valley, which was another 1 million acres, which would have taken in 3 towns, Ryan and the Cape Junction crew itself. And everybody in that area, there's 20,000 people living in that valley, and they would all been subject to permitting through the federal government for any aspect of their lives that they have to do. And so by that alone, we were able to gather signatures, and with donations, we mailed these things, and we just piled onto the White's desk, we piled onto the Walton's desk, we piled onto the committee desk. Anybody that had anything to do with these monuments, we just buried them with this stuff. And that seemed to work. I got their attention. And I today we have the emails, and we have them too, but then we have Facebook. But what happens is how many Facebook posts do you get a day? Well, not only that, you're just overwhelmed.
They just block them.
And you don't have to, and it's mass, you don't have to deal with it. It's there, but you can get rid of it, it's gone away. But when you have a bunch of
Cape
papers show
Breton
up
just
on
rejects
Congressman's
them.
desk, he has to respond to it. He has to actually respond to it. They don't like it, but it also puts them on notice that this is important.
It's sending a message that the people that live in the area don't want this thing. If people don't say anything, yeah.
Yeah, I guess my big question on the whole situation, you talk about how it's about control, and I get that. But the big question to me is, what are they gonna do with this land? Because I'm reading a lot of things that the federal government's coming in, buying up this public land, or displacing people, and it's payment to the Chinese and everybody else for the debt we owe. I mean, that should really scare everybody. You wanna get people motivated to say, look, the Chinese are essentially coming in and taking over the United States with land our government's given them. That says a lot.
And that becomes sovereign
I
land that we
would
can
not,
never
I
get
will
back.
not refute what you just said, but I will not confirm it because I can't document it. I have my suspicions, but I'm gonna try to keep this from going to conspiracy theory just because of the way they branded people. I could tell you a lot right now, but I don't wanna get branded a conspiracy theorist, okay?
Well, how about the stuff we do know about, like for example in Nevada, where they took the land away through Hillary Clinton, negotiating with the Canadian company to give it to
Yeah.
Russia.
Uranium
Yeah,
one?
we know about that. I think that's where stuff comes from, but let me finish this paragraph here. The southern border of the monument was artificially established as state line. Therefore, the monument does not include the ecological important Klamath River territories, Iron Gate, Copco Dam. Okay? And cuts out important sections of important ecoregions from the ecoregions, okay? Another buzzword from protection. Connectivity, there's another buzzword. Connectivity of the landscape is essential to protect and maintain healthy wildlife population, especially in the face of global warming. Another buzzword. Change. In addition, this expansion could connect Cascade-Siskiyou Monument with proposed Siskiyou Crest National Monument. That's why I'm talking about the Pacific Crest. It's in their document. It's not gone away. It's still in their list of things to do. Okay? So that's why I'm talking about. This is with what happened to San Bernardino, with this paragraph here from an internal document. That's the reason I'm talking about Siskiyou Crest. Yes, Nolan.
I was asked a question here by this lady, and it prompted me to answer her question and everything else's. What happens when a monument is declared, and I hear that they're going to restrict guns and all that stuff, and they have what's called a time period where you go in and negotiate with what's called the stakeholders, which could be people from New York and you. But the people from New York have more say, obviously. But what had happened, I'll tell you what happened to what's the name of that monument over there?
Cascade-Siskiyou?
But it's another name for it too, I can't think
Oh,
of it.
Soda Mountain.
Soda Mountain.
We call it Soda Mountain.
Yeah,
It's easier to
it was
pronounce.
called Soda Mountain Monument. And what happened was, everybody sat down and they defined what they could do, and everybody's worried about their private land holdings. So there were people in there that had, 160 acres. which is a quarter mile section. And they have private timber on there. And they were worried about being able to get in there and harvest their timber. And they were told that they would have access to their land. Do not worry about this thing. You're going to be taken care of, not an issue. Everybody breathed a sigh, and they went back to doing their stuff. And then eventually somebody said, hey, I gotta take some timber out, make some money. So he went to do it, and he got slapped down hard. And what they told him, no commercial activity on those roads interconnected, they're not on your property. Okay, so that's the kind of crap that's going on here. It's very disingenuous about this. And so you can't sit across the table and negotiate with snakes. That's the bottom line, is that these people lie, and they know it, and they've got just about every angle figured out. So the only real benefit is, or the real thing to do is let's try to stop it ahead of time, after it's happened. It's just a matter of time. Every place that's been put in a monument where people own private land, eventually you're gone within 20 years.
Same with the national park,
We're talking about stores, gas stations. They get them out of there pretty soon. You got to drive 40 miles of gas, food, and everything else, or it's longer. So this is what's happening. And unfortunately, you can't trust anything that comes out of a government person's mouth.
In the same year that Mr. Clinton proclaimed the Soda Mountains or Cascade-Siskiyou Monument, he did another one in Utah called the Escalante Grand Staircase, over 1 million acres. Today, Escalante Grand Staircase does not have enough children in their schools to keep their schools open. Their economy's dead and gone because they were a mining community. That area, the area that he declared as a monument, has one of the largest low sulfur coal deposits in North America. All right. Here's a little history lesson for you all. All true wealth comes from the ground. Everything starts with a hole in the ground. Everything starts with a hole in the ground. Okay? And all true wealth comes from the ground. And all of this, and the history of the world is, who will control the resources? That's what this is about. Who's going to control the resources? The Siskiyou Wild Rivers Monument would have locked up some of the richest mineral land in Oregon. This proposed Siskiyou Crest will lock up some of the richest timber and mineral lands in Northern California and Southern Oregon. I don't know what's in the Cascade-Siskiyou other than maybe over in Malheur County they found out that there's rare earth minerals and uranium deposits. So this is always, the history of the world is about who will control the resources. Who's going to control the land? It's always about the land and controlling the resources. That's what this is all about. It's not about the environment. This Snow Mountain Monument was on that list, that internal document. This was done in July of 2015. So don't tell me he's not working off that list. This was done in just last year, and it's on that list. So he is working off of that list. See, this is what he did to make the Snowy Mountain, and that was in July. He used his own authority, his executive order. These things come about. It's not like a wilderness that takes an act of Congress. It just takes a signature of the president. It can be done in the heartbeat, in a minute. That's why these things are that's why it's so abusive, because there's no public input. The only ones that know that it's going to happen is probably the environmental groups that propose it and the executive branch. And that's probably just a handful of the executive branch. Yes, Vivian.
And the original use of the national monument where the president could sign that into effect was for what? Well, I think it was 3 things, right?
Yeah, well, it was actually to save, it was like the Act said, it's the Antiquities Act, to save historic and artifacts, basically artifacts, and they used it for things like Devil's Tower, which is a unique geological feature, but they kept the area small. Originally it was small, and that was part of the law, is that the area was to be as small as possible. Well, how does 1 million acres sound small, and what's the object of protecting? It never says anything about protecting whole forests, or biodiversity, or connectivity. You know, it's a total abuse. Yes.
Do the counties have any recourse when they just sign a piece of paper and it is what it is? I mean, or can I?
It is what it is.
As the county commissioners, can I fight this?
Both the Josephine County Commissioners commissioners, I think Jackson County commissioners, Greg Walden, and our state reps wrote a letter 2 years ago. I called them all and says, that's 2 years ago. Why don't you write another one? So I don't know, I haven't heard back from them yet, but you know, you can't, if you sit back, that's who you need to go to first, is your elected officials. When they proposed the Siskiyou Wild Rivers Monument in the year 2000, I about went berserko because I seen what it was. I mean, I looked into this thing and studied it, I said, and I asked the same question you guys are asking now. I said, how do we stop these things? How do we fight against something like this? It's just a signature. So I started calling all my state reps and called a guy named Ronald A, who wrote several good books. And he says, you got to get your state elected officials involved. If they're not going to get involved, we can't get Greg Walden and our local state reps involved to fight against this, then it's the tougher road to hoe. But these are the guys that can stand up for us. I would like to see all the boards of commissioners write another letter. They're working on this. A lot of people in D.C. understand that the Antiquities Act is being abused, and they're trying to do something about it, but there's no movement forward on it. I mean, it should be abolished. It should just be abolished. It's been abused. I got a list at home of all the monuments they used since 1906, and it's hundreds. But in the last 20 years, it's been larger and larger and larger. And this goes back to, I'll give you a little history on what this goes back, what's driving this. This goes back to 1992 in the Earth Summit, Rio de Janeiro. Okay, this is the UN Earth Summit. The 179 world leaders were at this conference on Earth, global warming, whatever it was. It was biodiversity is what it was. 179 world leaders were at that conference. Herbert W. Bush didn't attend. He sat off the coast in his yacht, but he didn't go to the conference. But he had representatives there. And as soon as that conference was over, they came up with a thing called Agenda 21. It's a document that wraps up a lot of different treaties into one thing. It's got the Biodiversity Treaty, the Desertification Treaty, it's got the Biosphere Man Treaty, and all of those treaties were wrapped up in this one document, and all the directives were wrapped up in that. Herbert W. Bush signed it. But he couldn't get it past the Senate. The Senate wouldn't ratify it, and I'm going to skip ahead and show you why the Senate couldn't ratify it. There's a guy named Dr. Michael J. Kaufman. And when the Senate was talking about ratifying that treaty, he developed this map and he took it in the Senate. He says, this is what you're ratifying. The red area is no human habitation. Wow. The yellow areas is limited human habitation. The little green areas are normal habitation. This is what those treaties would have done to America. They would have turned it into, you see this area? This is where we're at. We wouldn't be here. Okay? That's the dream of the environmentalists. That's what Dave Foreman and Andy Kerr's dream is, to turn the country into this. Now what's even shocking about that, it was never ratified. He brought this map in the Senate, and they were so shocked, they didn't sign it. So it sat there during the Herbert W. Bush administration and nothing happened. President Clinton was elected. President Clinton convened what he called the President's Council on Sustainability. What did he do? He invited all the environmental groups that were in Rio de Janeiro to the White House. And they sat down and worked on this treaty. Now this has never been ratified by the Senate. But they took all the directives in all of these different treaties and they established a sustainability guru who's still in place. You can look it up on WikiLeaks. But they implemented all of these directives through all the cabinet positions. The President's Council on Sustainability was convened for 4 years. But in the meantime, in that 4 years, you got to remember, Clinton threw the doors wide open to the environmentalists, let them come into all the cabinet positions in the administration. The Forest Service, BLM, EPA, ATA, it doesn't matter what the cabinet position is. They got welcomed in. So they sent all of these directives out into these cabinet agencies. Are you beginning to see why we're having a problem with the BLM and the Forest Service now? See why we're having a problem with the EPA? Because they got their marching orders. They're implementing these treaties that have never been signed by the Senate. And how can I prove that? You see what this map is? This is the EPA's National Ecological Framework. This the EPA just did a couple years ago. Now, do you see any similarities between that map map? They drew this map up, and this has the same buzzwords, connectivity, core areas, it's the same thing, only the EPA drew this up. Why did they draw this up? Because they were mandated to, with all of these directives that were sent out from the President's Council on Sustainability, that's why we're having problems with the cabinet agencies, the BLM, the Forest Service, the EPA, because they have their marching orders. They're implementing these treaties even though they've never been ratified or signed. So, what has that done? See here, how much debt do we have? There's $140 trillion of minerals locked up in the western United States. Our debt's about 20 trillion. I think for 140 trillion, a little more than 20 trillion. But why are they locking up the West? Do you think it might be minerals? I think it might be minerals. Okay, and that may be what you just said. Okay, I can't go there. But use your own imagination. Just think it all the way through, because it probably is.
But you can also extrapolate too, because all these agencies are now armed with 40 caliber, handguns.
Yeah, I think I've probably
Well, that's
seen it to
okay.
the
My
choir
40
here a lot, but
trumps
a
their
lot of
40.
people know what's going on in the country. Federal government lays claim to 52% of the land from Colorado west.
Go anywhere
That's
with
the
that.
same land area that has all the minerals in it. It's the same land area they're trying to put all the monuments in. It's the same land area they're trying to control piece by piece. This goes back, way back. I got a document at home from 1834. Andrew Jackson vetoed a lands bill. The Senate and the House of Representatives wanted to take the land then, and Andrew Jackson said no. He vetoed it. It's a very good document. I gave Bill a copy of it. But they're not allowed to own the land. When the treaties were set up in this country, when a state became a territory, the federal government had one mandate. When that became a state, you had the right to dispose of the land.
Right.
It was supposed to be sold to private property, and whatever could be sold, it was turned back to the states.
Correct.
They failed miserably. They have not done that. And that's probably because of that, right there. Because of the minerals, all right? That's why they don't want to cut loose of this land. We have a runaway executive branch. What's it lead to in our country?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's leading to in this country.
And more debt.
Huh?
And more debt.
Yeah.
We gotta pay
Catastrophic
people to fight those fires.
Yeah, you see,
So we're going into more debt.
firefighting is consuming over 50% of the Forest Service budgets now. They're not managing land. I actually remember a time when I could go to my Forest Service office, walk in and talk to my local ranger and get some help. They're friendly, they're willing to help you.
And when they actually went out and maintained the land
Exactly.
and did their jobs.
They actually did the roads, they actually took care of the forest, they actually sold timber then, yes.
I talked to a county commissioner in Linn County, and they've had issues with timber, as you know. And he told me if he had $1 for every $5 that's spent in forest fire mitigation, if he had one of those $5, he would be able to eliminate forest fires and also the potential for forest fires, and also have helicopters and things in his own county to be able to combat it. That's the difference in debt that we're accruing because of federal ownership.
And the real travesty is when these trees are killed by fire. We had the Biscuit fire right here. We had the distinction of Josephine County having the largest fire in the history of Oregon, 500,000 acres back in the year 2003. 500,000 acres. Very little of that was logged. A whole bunch of trees were killed. But the reason that land wasn't logged and that money wasn't put into the county coffers or went to schools, roads, or public safety was because of 17 frivolous environmental lawsuits. Stopped them from logging those trees where they had value. By the time the frivolous lawsuits got thrown out, the timber was valueless. So now we have a forest of dead trees. Just waiting. It's a dead trees with brush underneath. You know what? That's a perfect fire. It's absolutely the perfect fire because the trees are bone dry, and as soon as lightning hits one of those trees and
They
sparks it up,
explode.
it gets that brush on fire. That is a perfect match for a fire. So we've got to change the policy on the forest. It's terrible.
We just need to take
This is
our
the
country
wildfire
back
is
and take control
250
back.
acres and greater. Over 10 million acres burnt last year. Over 10 million acres of forest got burned. And you know what? If it was on the national forest, very little of it got logged. Because of environmentalists, yeah.
How much CO2 is that putting into the atmosphere?
A lot more than our cars, and you know what's odd about that? Actually, after the fire's over, the trees put more pollutants in the air than during the fire when they sit there and rot. So why aren't we taking these dead trees? And I would like to see that. I would like to put some legislation for that. If they're killed in the fire, get them out quick and replant.
Yes.
Then, you know, if we would have replanted the Biscuit fire,
That makes
we'd have
sense.
10-foot tall trees now.
That's right.
Yep.
Go look at it. It's
all brush.
It's
It's
a
all brush.
moonscape. It's terrible. Yeah, Jim.
I call it a 200-year plan,
Yeah.
because what happens when you have a big fire like this, the only thing that grows back is the underbrush.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that comes, and canoes. So the next lightning storm comes along, bang, you set that one off, and it goes again, so you get another batch of stuff burns. And the ground gets heated up so much it kills it. And in the past, when we did plant trees in place, we could have trees back in 45 years, the forest back. This happened at Mount St. Helens. They went out, they planted, I think it was close to 8 million trees. And you haven't seen some of the pictures, I don't know if you ever saw them, they're amazing. Someplace where they dug down ash, they had to dig down somewhere around the neighborhood of about 6 feet to get the dirt to plant a little tiny sap tree. And that cone was 18 feet in diameter. You know? And that's what they did. And what they planted all those trees.
But what's
And
more,
now they're 50 feet or so, and they say within about a year, another 5
well, you see,
years.
what you're talking about is what they did on private property.
Yes, that's
You
right.
know what they did on the national forest? Nothing. Nothing. If you to look at that today, you can see on the private property a beautiful forest growing, 15, 20, 25 foot tall trees. And if it's right next to forest land, all that is ash. We have the same problem all throughout the West. This has got to change. The only way it's going to change is enough people writing their congressman. Remember what Jefferson said? We don't have government of the people, we have government of the people to participate. So we need people to participate more in our government. That's the reason. Teddy Roosevelt said it a different way. He said, if you could kick the guy in the rear who's responsible for most of the trouble we have in America, you might not sit down for a month.
Is there a possibility of getting regular folks like us to do a class action suit against named environmental groups like KS Wild and whatever, and et al., and sue them for loss of pursuit of happiness,
Revenue.
damages, all the things that we've lost.
I would like to see it go that way, but I think the best route to really go, and the way that really works, is that you pick an individual, and if you're harmed, you go after a civil rights violation. Because then you go right after that individual's pocketbook. You go right at him. It's not at an organization that can get funding for it. The trouble with what you're saying is the laws are not set up in our favor. The laws are set up in the favor of the environmentalists because they make a tremendous amount of money suing the federal government. Because when they sue and win, they get all their attorney's costs plus.
I recently sent out an email, I don't know if you got it or not, but it was I subscribe to the conservationists thing, so I know what the enemy's doing. And they sent out the thing, they're gonna be approaching the Capitol, and they're gonna be lobbying all the folks up there at the Capitol, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to go up there with protest signs outside. So you've taken away our land, you've taken away our earnings, you've made us poor, and march out front.
That's basically what we did when we fought the Siskiyou Wild Rivers Monument.
Should we do this again?
We put 300 people in the intersection of 199, where you go down to 6 Mile, with signs and blow horns and a great big American flag. Bruce Babbitt, the Secretary of the Interior, came out to Josephine County, okay? And I had a guy in town at the Forest Service office. It used to be off right up the head on the other side of the town, right across the freeway. That's where the Forest Service office was. I had a gentleman up there with a cell phone, and he said, well, we just had 5 black Suburbans drive in, so we knew that was Bruce Babbitt and his group, okay? And so he called me a little bit He says, one of those Suburbans heading out your way. So he came out. Now you gotta understand, we had a lot of people out there in that intersection. We had 300 people with signs and horns and blowhorns and American flag and all kinds of stuff. And they sent that Suburban out there, and he pulled across the street, took a couple looks, whoop, went right back to town. We got a phone call. Bruce Babbitt will meet you in Medford. So we sent 10 people over to meet with Bruce Babbitt, and we told him to go home. We don't want you here. Why do the environmentalists prefer this to that? Why do they? Why would they want? Why would they prefer? This generates
They
income.
like to wipe
This
their
funds
butt
our
with
public
rocks.
safety. You see, is it about the environment?
No.
It's not about the environment.
Control.
It's about, here's what it really is, right? The very basic. It's about moving all of us from the country to the city. If they can destroy our economies, if they can ruin our funding for our county government, eventually we're all moving. And you can see it. There's been a mass exodus from the rural countryside. You know, 75% of the people used to live rural. That's just reversed now. 25% in the rural, 75% in the city. And our big problem today is the rural-urban divide. Our city cousins don't understand what they're doing to us. Because they'll go on vacation, and they'll drive out in the country, and they'll see our beautiful countryside, and they'll see all of this, and they go, oh, it's so beautiful. Don't ever change it. I just love it so much. They'll drive back to their concrete jungle, and then every time there's an environmental law that's going to hurt us, they'll vote for it because they don't want to change our way of life. They don't want to change the scenery around here. So, yes, Stuart.
Yeah, I went to a meeting in Medford where they were thinking about locking up some land on the Rogue River, a little refuge they call it. And boy, they had the room packed, a whole bunch of them. KS Wild celebrities were there, the guy Patrick Duffy from Dallas, and all of them people. And they were talking how pristine this land was and we got to preserve it and everything. But after about 30 minutes, I just about had enough. So I just had to say, I haven't heard anybody say anything against you, so I got to talk. I got to tell you something. Not everybody looks at land the same way you do. Said, this ain't a damn shrine here you've got. This is something that people have made their living from for generations. And you guys have no respect for it. You're just stepping all over it. And I tell you, these people are mentally ill because one after the next one, they kept telling you how much this land was. That they were like worshiping this land, like there's a shrine. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Well, you got to understand that they do. It's earth worship is what
What's
it
the
is.
definition of environmentalist is the mental part.
Yeah, they're just mentalists. You know, I used to tell them about what you said there. I used to say, yeah, you know, this place is beautiful. It is really pristine and it is beautiful. And we produce natural resources for 150 years. We've done a pretty good job, haven't we? I think we managed the land pretty well. It's still beautiful, it's still great, and we can still produce natural resources.
Absolutely.
You know, our forests need to be thin. There's a lot of money out there that we can generate. Why are we fighting for public safety money? Why are we trying to tax the people?
Right.
Why don't
Open
we
up some
cut some
timber
trees?
sales.
Why don't we harvest some trees and help our forest out? Doesn't that make a lot more sense? I was thinking I was telling my wife today, I said, why, if we took half the effort and half the money that we put into trying to tax the people on these tax levies and lobby for the ONC lands, we'd probably be harvesting trees and wouldn't be talking about taxing the people.
Yep.
I mean, it's not rocket science. It's plain and simple. A record 10.1 million acres burned. And this is going up, 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 up. And I'm going to warn you again, just like it did in 2000. I warned everybody in 2002 that if we didn't change our forest policies, we're going to burn. And we had the business fire, 500,000 acres, almost prophetic.
Ronald, see you.
We'll see you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Have a good day. This is what's happened to our economy because of that. You can look at the decline in jobs, just down, 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 all the way down. You know, and I could almost point to the day that this all happened. Oh, I don't have that map on this one. I could point to the day, there it is. You know what this day is right here? The Northwest Forest Plant. started their lawsuits. When we had instituted the Northwest Forest Plan to save the spotted owl, that's when our property taxes started going up. Before, the OSC supply did everything we needed. It funded our sheriff, it funded our public services, it funded our county government. We didn't have a problem with all this stuff. But that's it. The Northwest, I can almost point to the date. So, you know, I got a guy I know that he's trying to get something going here. He's trying to get a sand and gravel mining operation going at Josephine County. We don't produce any aggregate in our county. This is a very wealthy man, came in our county, saw what needed to be done. He invested a lot of money here, and he said, well, they're not even producing aggregates, no, not even producing sand and gravel. You know, you use that every day. You drive on it everywhere you go. The foundation, it's the very foundation of our society. But look at what he had to do to just get a permit. And he's still not done. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because we have LCDC, we have Senate Bill 100. You guys are more fortunate in California in a way, because we have Senate Bill 100. Now I know they're going crazy down there, aren't they? They're enacting more and more laws. But if a guy comes into Oregon and he wants to do something in the county, he has to jump through so many hoops. You can see the hoops this gentleman jumped through to do what he wants to do. Okay? Why would the county want to make it even harder than Senate Bill 100 LCDC? This guy was approved by LCDC. He was appealed back to LUBA by the environmentalists. The same people that proposed the Siskiyou Crest Monument filed an appeal against this guy. It was K.S. Wild through their cohorts called Rogue River Keepers, or Rogue River Keepers. But the same people, they both sit on the same board. They're not, these guys are all interlocked, they're all intertwined, they're all funded. So, you know, but why would the county make it harder than it needs to be?
It's more revenue.
No, they're anti-business, anti-development.
They want to come buy your land for pennies on the dollar.
That's eventually what it's going to do. Pennies on the dollar. Find a map here. Find that one that's got the stats on it. There's some interesting. The federal government administers 76% of all public forest land. That's 249 million acres, Bureau of Land Management National Forest. These are the lands that are in danger right now. These are the lands where all the environmental lawsuits are happening. This is where the rural economies are being decimated. Remember that map that the government owns 52% of that in the western states? They're not having this much trouble in the east. They're having trouble, but not like we're having here. About 52 million acres of U.S. forest land are set aside by law for non-timber use, such as parks and wilderness areas, okay? The National Forest System includes 193 million acres in 41 states, 9% of the total land area of the United States, about 188 million acres in national forest. People, the government doesn't need to control this land. They're doing a lousy job. You know, for every dollar they spend, they lose 75 cents. The states, for every dollar they spend, they make about 15 bucks. So the states do a much better job of managing land than the federal agencies do. We need to try to transfer this land back to the states. Yeah, Joe.
You might speak to the Tillamook Forest and how it's managed by the state up there.
Oh, yeah. The second largest fire in the history of Oregon was in the Tillamook Forest up in west Oregon. That was a 400,000 acre forest. That was primarily private land and county-owned land. But they got together after that fire, and they said, "Well, we got to do something. This forest is burnt." So what they did is the counties promised that they would use timber receipts, and they floated bonds to get the money to harvest that land. So the counties, through the timber receipts, paid off the debt for the harvesting. But that forest got harvested. The money went into the coffers of the county, and it got replanted. Today, it's absolutely beautiful. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be 200 years before the Biscuit Fire looks like anything because of mismanagement of the agencies. We've got to change it. We've got to change this. it's a travesty in the making. So, I'm about done, folks. You got any questions? There's a lot of questions, I'm sure. What do we do?
I'd like to do something.
Yeah, Clint.
Well, if you had enough, the State of Jefferson Committee has been formed for Josephine County.
Yep.
And as a question to you, sir, would you support that?
Oh, I support it 100%.
I thought so. So we're moving along, and we figure in about a year, we'll put the vote to the people. Yep.
Well, I think
For
that'll,
that Josephine County enter the 51st state.
well,
People of Josephine County. It's county by county. Each county has to do that. When
Aren't
we get
some of the
2006
counties in northern California as well?
I'm sorry?
Aren't some of the counties in northern
There's
California?
21 counties have agreed and already declared separation.
and how many in Oregon?
Zero.
Zero.
Well,
You know,
if
it
we
was the
become
other
a-
way around when they tried that.
That's right.
It was the other way around at 49.
If we
I mean,
become
at
a
40.
state, aren't we still subject?
41.
No, because as part of the negotiation, there will be, we will have a seat at the table saying, we're going to have control of our lands. We will also not be corporatized. The government, the state government, the city governments will not be corporatized. So the corporate rules will not apply.
Corporations was,
So just bring in the.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
That is, when you do that, and you lay claim to these lands and the feds them, you have to accept them on this resolution. You can't take them yet, it's called all those things, so you can't accept that.
Yeah, that'll have to.
It has to happen, because the only people do it is you have to stop it.
Well, what we'll do is we'll sue. And that's what the California is doing. They're suing because the state legislature in California said they went over the 30-day time limit to respond and get the law on the books. So the 21 counties have gotten together and are suing, as the other previous 4 states have, Tennessee, Vermont, Maine, and I cannot remember, I think it was
Virginia.
West Virginia, yeah, thank you. And they've already sued successfully and created their own state, so we have precedent. We also have equal footing clause that were, it's Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution process. Does the government recognize the Constitution?
I think you have another case for lack of representative form of government. because
Right.
Salem and Sacramento don't represent Northern California and Southern Oregon. They never have.
And we would change that. We would have 1 senator of each county go and sit. A good, solid, bicameral Congress.
Well,
Instead of 2
I'm all for that.
representatives.
I'm all for that. Now we got, what's Jackson County doing? What's Douglas County doing?
Jackson County is in the process of forming a committee.
Okay.
Klamath County is also in the process, and Douglas County just called me yesterday for information. So that's
Okay, great.
And there's education that's going to be presented throughout the state.
correct.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's a great idea. I don't know what's going to happen with that because I think eventually it has to be approved by the federal legislature and be signed by the president. So,
No, Congress decides that.
the president doesn't have
The
to sign
Oregon
it?
state legislator, the California state legislator has to approve a succession of each of us, and then Congress, the United States, can approve that formation. And under the Constitution of the United States, when a new state becomes admitted into the Union, all land in the boundaries of that new state become the property, 100% property of the state, not the federal government. The government has to relinquish all titles to all properties within the new state. That's in the Constitution.
I'm all for it.
And that's why we're working so hard to get this state of Jefferson on the road, and we're working hard. We need everybody's support and vote, and this will help Josephine County to
Tremendously.
take care of its own resources.
Yeah.
We can get our minerals from our gold out of the river.
Yeah.
We can get our timber lands. We got so much natural resources that's being wasted because the federal government took it away from us.
We are the poorest little rich county in the West.
Yes, exactly correct. And
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%,
Yeah.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
You're on the right track.
Oh, I know. I fought these issues for 30 years. I want to introduce Bill Wagner. He's been a friend of mine for over 25 years. He's the grange master for Josephine County and a real constitutional. He got some information on land.
Good.
How many was at the last meeting over in Cave Junction? Okay. I said I'd bring you some copies of the resolution that the state adopted through the Granges. It's subject, return the federal lands to the states where they belong, okay? And I'll hand these out to you. Is this your husband? Well, it might not. War veteran. Been fighting since '59. The main thing about this resolution that I got passed through the Grange is in paragraph, whereas number 3 and number 4. Now what that tells you is that in 1780, the Continental Congress passed a resolution which later became law, and they said in that resolution that when a new state come in the Union, all the lands in that state belong to that state. And that was ratified in 1781 by the 13 original colonies. And if you read the first part of Article 6 of the Constitution of the United States, in paragraph 1 it says, whereas per the United States Constitution, Article 6, paragraph 1 states, all debts, contracts, and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under the Constitution as under the Confederation. So all this stuff, when the Western states become states, our Congress and our President and all them violated the actual Constitution of the United States. Okay. Now there's several ways that you become a way to fight all this corruption. You got to become a lobbyist, individual lobbyist. The only thing open to you is letters, telephones, telegraphs, and the computer. Now, you got to make yourself a nuisance. I've already got Wilson working on this. What we're trying to do here in Oregon is to lobby and to get the state legislatures to adopt this resolution, what it says in it, and to join with the state of Idaho and Utah with their lawsuit that happened over 5 years ago. It's still before the Supreme Court. And what their approach is, eminent domain. How about that? Eminent domain is part of your Bill of Rights. But you can lobby. And, you know, most of these legislatures, politicians, are like cockroaches. Because what they can't eat, they crawl over and mess up for the rest of us. So I suggest that you start making known about this law and start accusing them of violating the Constitution. The more people that bother them, you see, when you're a politician, you're dedicated to stay in there. So the more people that start bugging them, it gets to a point of 50% out there when it tips over in our favor. And that's exactly what you want, because then they start getting on our side of the fence, but you got to lobby them. You got to be your own representative, like our forefathers said in the beginning of this country. There's other things that I could tell you, but it'd take hours. Yes?
There are some senators on our side that are actively now researching what is going on as a result of Burns. Actually, if you study it, you see that much of the land that was supposed to be the state's when it went from a territory to a state was never ceded back to Oregon.
Well, see, that's how I
From that
address.
time forward, nobody has said a thing.
I address how they're violating the Constitution by Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17
I
of the
understand that. My
Constitution.
point is, you guys, we have people working on our side in the legislature. So, state.
Yes, we do.
So
But we got to convince all of
don't be afraid to
them.
lobby them and tell them, use us.
Do you have a list of names?
I can get one.
One of the biggest things we have to do with our state legislature, we have to get a conservative majority of both the House and the Senate. And you know, when you have a liberal majority in the Senate, the House, and a very, 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 very liberal governor, the chips are stacked against you. So that's something, we gotta get both conservatives in at the state level.
And in the courts.
Well, yeah, in the courts, these judges are, they're lobbying from the bench.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the state representative.
There is, that most everything that's done to us is circumvented. The checks and balances, Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 of the Constitution, and your Bill of Rights, it don't take a rocket scientist to see how they have circumvented all of our laws. You've got a president now that I say is a communist Muslim, and you're only 2 steps away from total communistic America, because it's so socialistic throughout the state, local, and federal government that 2 things they haven't done yet to make us a common nation. They haven't taken our guns, and they haven't taken our real estate private property. When they get that done, we're a communist nation. That's why this guy that's running, Trump, has got them all excited because he's not an insider. You got the biggest clique in both major parties, and I belong to that. I'm a Republican precinct committee person, but I'm also for Trump and writing the national chairman and tell how this is all a charade. The television networks and everything are controlled by the world banker Rothschild dynasty, okay? And when you look at the unions and stuff, they've been taking over the unions for years. And we're so inundated with anti-American people that hate the Constitution and Bill of Rights. It's pathetic. You just see them at all levels. And the biggest problem we've had in the Republican Party is we put them in there, and they say all these nice things and how they're going to be against Obamacare, and they go in there and finance it with the Democrats. So that's what it's a big fight that's coming down.
So is that what Trump's gonna do, or is he not gonna do that?
If Trump does even 1/10 of what he says he'll do, will get us out of a lot of problems. If he repeals the Foreign Trade Acts, you know, in 1968, the United States Congress took the silver backing off our dollar.
Yep.
Now your dollar's paper is only worth a nickel compared to what it was in 1968. It's total control. That's the name of the game. Whether you call it socialism, communism, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's controlling us. We, the people, are supposed to be sovereign.
But he flip-flops so much, how do you know he's gonna do that?
No, you're listening to stuff coming right out of the media. The media started being bought out in 1916. I've got documentation to show you how the bankers out of Europe and stuff started buying all the major newspapers in America. I can show you all the people that have stocks in the radio stations and television networks. And they are all these same people. That's like on Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and Illuminati and all this. They're all coming out of that banker Rothschild dynasty. And so there's so much to say.
Well, all you gotta look at is the fact that anyone who keeps supporting someone other than Trump is obviously part of the establishment.
I can't hear you. What?
All of a sudden now you've got the establishment who hated Cruz supporting him. What does that tell you? Because anyone but Trump, because Trump is the least.
I have documentation to show you that Cruz is an insider.
I'm gonna change this meeting away from a presidential campaign back to something local.
Thank you.
I wanna show you a 5-minute video, and I want you to look at this video with an open mind and realize that this guy is pretty interesting. Listen to who this guy is. He changed.
We're all future stewards of the earth, and that's all of us. Here's a quick quiz. What is the most renewable and sustainable material with which to build our homes? How can we turn some of the CO2 we're putting into the atmosphere into an asset? And how can we make the world more beautiful and green? The answer to all these questions is trees. Trees make up about 90% of all the living biomass on Earth, and forests serve as home to the majority of species on the planet. We use thousands of products, many every day, that come from trees. Some are obvious, like wood and paper, and many not so obvious, like microcrystalline cellulose, a key ingredient in many medicines. Anyway, who doesn't love trees? Yet trees, especially in the last few decades, have become very controversial. People are divided into 2 broad camps. One group sees trees as a critical source of renewable material and of renewable energy. This group generally favors planting trees and making use of the many products derived from them. The other group emphasizes the value of forests as ecosystems to provide a protected habitat for threatened species. This group prefers to see forests off limits to commercial use. The arguments between these two groups can get pretty heated. But here's the good news. If we do it right, we can use our trees and enjoy them too. Before I explain how, I need to define two terms. The first is forestry, which means the creation, management, and use of forests. The second term is deforestation, which means the permanent loss of forests. There are two widespread misconceptions about forestry. The first misconception is that forestry, as practiced by the forest industry, is responsible for deforestation. We may think that when we buy wood from a lumber yard, we are causing a bit of forest to be lost somewhere. But what we're really doing is sending a signal to the marketplace to plant more trees, to produce more wood, to supply the demand in the lumber yard. It is no different from any other renewable crop. It's just that trees take longer to mature than annual farm crops. The giant paper company Boise Cascade is just as much in the business of planting trees as it is in harvesting them. The key point is it's not the harvesting of trees that causes deforestation. Deforestation is the result of harvesting and then not replanting a forest or not letting it grow back naturally, which it would do if just left alone. Deforestation sounds like a bad word, and it can be, but usually it's not. All it means is that after the trees are harvested, the land is used for a different purpose. The largest cause of deforestation is agriculture, the creation of new farmland. But farming is important. After all, the world has 7 billion people to feed. Another reason for deforestation is to make way for towns and cities. Manhattan was once a great forest. Now it's a great city. The second misconception about forestry is the tendency to judge landscapes by how they look to our eyes. We easily make the mistake of using our sense of what is beautiful and what is unsightly to judge the ecology of the land. This results in repulsion at the sight of a recently logged landscape because it looks ravaged, destroyed, and unsightly. We don't react this way to a landscape of pasture with sheep peacefully grazing or a wheat field waving in the wind, yet both are examples of deforestation. Where there once was a biodiverse natural forest, we now have a ranch or a farm. In other words, we judge the book by the cover and equate beauty with ecological health and unsightliness with destruction of nature. These impressions have led many environmentalists to support cutting fewer trees, as if our forests are disappearing. But they're not. There is the same area of forest in the US and Canada today as there was 100 years ago. If anything, it's growing. This despite the fact that the population has tripled. But the professional environmentalists are never satisfied. They behave as if every tree should be protected and that the products they yield are unnecessary. This is badly misguided. The correct position, from a purely environmental perspective, is to grow more trees, the world's most abundant renewable resource, and use more wood. We can do both. In the end, we're all tree huggers. I'm Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace for Prager University.
We plant the less of everything we have to use. So spread that around. Spread that little video around. It's on YouTube called Trees Are the Answer. Give that to your environmentalist friends so they can wake up. And it's pretty interesting. I want to thank you all for coming. Any other questions, let me know. I'll answer any.